So walking the other day, and part of the sky was really gray. It was really cool.
Lori Brooks has found peace in painting. The colors are calming, the strokes soothing. But it's a temporary distraction from the disease that started ravaging her body 3 years ago.
It felt like my whole life had been turned upside down and backwards. Just, a picture of pulling the rug out from underneath you and kind of flopping around. It was hard. And your first thought is, of course, am I gonna die?
In 2018, the mother of 4 who lives in Abbotsford, BC, was diagnosed with advanced colon cancer. She endured surgery, months of chemotherapy and radiation, but a year later, it came back.
I was in a lot of distress and just feeling like my life is over. And I'm not gonna get to see my kids get married or have their own kids, and just that feeling of loss, just a stabbing pain, and I could barely breathe. And so I thought, I can't live like this.
The anguish led her to a different kind of treatment, hallucinogenic medicine known as magic mushrooms.
Did you think that this was going to help you deal with dying?
Yes.
Brooks says the 6-hour experience was like being in a dream, but she was awake. A trip in her mind where she suddenly found herself in a forest, dark and scary at first, but at the end, a light.
Going, oh, I'm not alone in this. I have all these people in my life, too, that are here for us. And I think it was more of that just the feeling that I'm not alone.
That session was with a therapist present, but underground. Technically, magic mushrooms are banned in Canada.
Do you have any concerns about it being illegal?
Well, what are they going to do? I'm a cancer patient who's suffering. Are they going to throw me in jail? I doubt it.
When Daniel Carcillo played with the National Hockey League, he was known as Carbomb. An enforcer, he was a fighter and a menace on the ice. At the age of 30, when his team, the Chicago Blackhawks, was on a run of Stanley Cup wins, number 13 walked away from the game. There were too many hits to the head, and he was diagnosed with traumatic brain injury.
I got to a point where I became hopeless and very suicidal. I was extremely lost. I had just cut off the hockey community, which is really the only community that I knew, and I didn't know what to do next.
What happened next was a trip to a mushroom farm where he learned about the compound that makes the magic, psilocybin.
Not only saved my life, but also helped me really reverse all of the symptoms that I was suffering from.
Today, Carcillo doesn't recognize the man he used to be.
I'm the best, healthiest version of myself.
Turn on, tune in, and drop out.
This is the version of psychedelics most people know, synonymous with the counterculture generation of the 1960s. But in the 50s, in a small Saskatchewan city on Canada's prairies, hallucinogenic research was already underway at the Weyburn Mental Hospital. Psilocybin, along with LSD, was being used to treat mental health issues and alcoholism, not only among patients, but among doctors and nurses too. It was here that the expression psychedelics was first coined.
It's such an interesting area of healthcare because it does carry that cultural baggage.
Dr. Evan Wood is one of Canada's leading authorities on treating addiction, including how the war on drugs was a setback.
Cultural backlash that led to essentially a total freeze being put on research in this area and really halting the science as well.
So we're decades behind and we could have been ahead of this.
Yeah, it's a sad state of affairs, and that's something that we probably knew in the 1960s or 70s.
So this is a spore print that we took from a mushroom that we grew in-house.
This is the heart of research in Canada today. Numinous, a state-of-the-art lab in Nanaimo, BC, is growing millions of the rock star of psychedelic mushrooms, Psilocybe cubensis. Lab workers are busy extracting that crucial compound, psilocybin. It's illegal to produce, possess, and sell psilocybin, the active ingredient in mushrooms. But Numinous is the first company in Canada to have legal permission to harvest this hallucinogen. The company is about to begin clinical trials on patients. So how do these mushrooms work on the brain? The brain has all these pathways, much like a highway. When a patient has a psychedelic experience, different parts of the brain that weren't connecting now do. This greater neuroplasticity enhances the brain's ability to reorganize thought patterns, which in turn helps those with psychological disorders to tap into different pathways for dealing with their anxiety, depression, pain, or trauma.
And what psychedelics do is they actually disrupt the default mode network, temporarily taking it offline in essence, so that one can have an experience that's different from being trapped in those same loops of thinking.
Dr. Devin Christie wears two hats for Numinous, medical doctor and counselor. She works with patients who have chronic pain and trauma. A clinical treatment with psychedelics can last up to 8 hours.
These medicines cause changes in our brain and in our perception that can be quite profound. Some examples are a sense of timelessness or boundlessness, having mystical type experiences that can be very spiritually significant or meaningful. There can be visuals or auditory senses, or even something called synesthesia, when different senses blend together in one's experience.
Hello. How are you today?
Outside a clinical setting, it's clear the future is fungi. Canadians are consuming them in pills, chocolate, or tea. But these products contain tiny amounts of magic mushrooms. It's called microdosing. And this Vancouver dispensary is seeing a shroom boom, even if it's still technically illegal.
I don't know if you remember when cannabis companies were first opening and before they were fully regulated. We're kind of functioning in that gray zone.
With microdosing, the experience is less about a trip and more about being able to focus the mind.
How can you ensure that this is safe for them?
Our biggest thing is just like teaching people what these medicines do, educating them on the dosage and the protocols, like essentially just trying to get as much information out as possible so that people can make decisions for themselves.
It's not just storefront dispensaries. Canadians who are looking for relief from stress, anxiety, and depression are turning to online sellers, and there's not much regulation in the gray area of microdosing. Even Daniel Carcillo is getting into the game. He now follows a weekly regimen of microdosing, and he's the founder of We Sana Health, a wellness company in Chicago, testing the use of mushrooms to treat anxiety and depression in people with traumatic brain injury. It's a total conversion for Carcillo.
Do you miss hockey?
No, not at all. So excited to be doing what I'm doing and very grateful for all the suffering that I went through in the NHL and afterwards. So, you know, in a way, I can thank Gary Bettman and thank the NHL for the position that they've put me in. You know, the suffering was definitely necessary to get to a point of recovery.
Lori Brooks is no longer suffering, even though her cancer has spread. She turned to mushrooms again to help her prepare for the inevitable. She now has the support of a nonprofit group helping terminally ill Canadians legally access psilocybin.
I was lucky enough to have people in my life that were willing to offer it to me, but most people don't. And I can't imagine going through cancer and everything just without that help.
The first time around, she wanted to know her family was going to be fine. This time, she needed to know she was going to be okay.
I'm at the point now where I'm just happy living my life. And I'm at peace knowing that I'm most likely not going to survive this. But I'm just enjoying every day that I have.